Hi everyone and welcome along. Today we're going to paint another pet portrait. Yes, we're going to do a miniature schnauzer. So that's a dog breed that is super cute and a really interesting one to learn. Today's video is sponsored by our friends at Skillshare. They've got another fantastic trial offer for you, which I'll tell you all about in a minute. But for now, grab your paints and let's get started. So before we get started, let me tell you all about our sponsor today, and that is Skillshare. Now, what makes Skillshare unique? Well, they are the largest online learning community for creatives with a wide depth and breadth of topics ranging from illustration and graphic design to music and marketing. So whether you're already running a creative business and you want a little bit of help with your organisational skills and your motivation, or you just want to learn a new skill and you want a new hobby, it's got something for everybody. At the moment, I'm really enjoying a class called Notion for YouTube creators. Easily manage your creative projects by Asante Bean. Now, this class is all about helping with productivity, and I can really do with some of that, especially as a YouTube content creator. And I'm learning about this new program software called Notion, which is just helping me out in all sorts of ways, which I could really do. It's a customizable workspace app that allows you to store and organise info, plan projects, write documents, which Ant and I, well, we're always talking about what we're going to be coming up with next for YouTube, so this has been fantastic. So I would really urge you to take advantage of Skillshare's amazing offer they're giving to the first 500 people to use my link will get access to one of Skillshare's best offers, 30 days free and 40% off your first year of Skillshare membership. So don't delay and go and see what Skillshare can offer you. It's always a good day when we're painting pets. They are, well, you know, we're big animal lovers in this household, so we're going to paint a miniature schnauzer today, which is really fun, very sweet little dog. I've got a few friends with miniature schnauzers, and it's a breed that I get asked to do a lot on Patreon. So we're going to begin with an oval shape. We're going to do a sitting schnauzer because that's a bit trickier than a standing one. So we've got a sort of oval shape here, which is going to be the torso, which is going to bring down either side some legs, and then up from there we're going to get the sort of shoulder into the head shape, but down the side we'll continue with that oval shape there, coming down and getting another smaller sort of oval shape there, which is going to give us the sort of haunches and paws, sort of little back leg paw shape there. So if I start to just sort of flesh this out a little bit, so the schnauzer has, when they're clipped in a sort of rather smart manner, they've got very sort of neat bodies. Just flesh that out a bit, and just sort of neat little tail, nothing too big. But then their legs, their front legs in particular, are very, very smartly swishy, and they sort of swish down in front of the legs like this, and then we get a nice sort of broad paw at the bottom, and then we get a nice tufty front, and then we get the head shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, this is actually for the muzzle. I need two sort of round shapes, one for the muzzle like that, and then one for the rest of the skull, and that's going to give us the place to stick our ears in on the top there, just folding down, and it's going to give us the area where we put our nose, the doggy nose. And then this whole area here is the most incredible sort of beard and whiskers, and somewhere in there is a little mouth, but it's fairly covered over with tufty hair. And then the tufty hair sort of rises up through into some amazing, rather sort of opinionated eyebrows, I always find, and then some lovely little dainty eyes, just hiding in there, and that's given us a really nice shape for our schnauzer. I'm just going to bulk him out a little bit. Now, when we do a very sketch-like illustration like this, it's really important to make sure that you give your pencil a light erase with a putty rubber, a kneadable eraser, because it just will remove the sort of excess pencil that we don't really want. I'm also going to put a little collar on this guy. There we go. So I'm just going to give this a light rubbing out, and then we're going to paint a black miniature schnauzer, because I think that's a really interesting challenge for how do you convey black fur and keep there lots of light and shade and all the other colours that you do actually see when you're painting something that's black. Okay, so you can see how that's just much lighter and pale. I also added a bit more to the tail, and yeah, that's a kneadable eraser there. It's a very useful little bit of kit. Mine is a Faber-Castell kneadable eraser. Anyway, so I am going to wake up in my palette. I've got Moonglow here. It's a lovely kind of purpley dark colour. I've also got Paynes Grey, which is more of a bluey dark colour, and I do have Mars Black, which is going to become, it's going to be very useful in this, but I just want to show you the difference there. And also a bit of burnt sienna is always a very useful mixing colour for these tones. So I'm first going to mix in Moonglow and burnt sienna. I want to get a sort of warm dark tone, and I'm going to paint with a size 0 brush. That feels like a nice size, and I'm going to paint this quite dilute to begin with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint in the sections of the body sort of separately. So we're looking at the front of the body first, and of course we've got the collar, which we don't want to paint over. But I'm just going to keep my brush moving, and I'm going to sort of add some slightly more concentrated bits of this Moonglow burnt sienna as I go, and I'm looking at a reference image, which I think is always really helpful when you are painting something. I mean, we're obviously not painting photorealism, but we're making an attempt to paint it accurately. And what that just means is, if I keep looking at that, I get all the clues from the way the fur contours over the body. And I want my brush, just like when I'm painting birds or any kind of animal, the brush stroke needs to reflect the sort of the way the fur sits and grows. So you can see, even though we're forming a fairly solid colour, I am getting a little bit of interest and movement by just making sure my brush follows the angle of the way the hair grows. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a little bit of Paynes Grey into my Mars Black. There we go, a little bit more of that. And I've got that sort of, it's wet, but it's not sort of heavily concentrated, but it's quite a strong colour. And I'm going to bring that colour in now, just from the chest, and work my way out, sort of down under the collar, keeping my brush moving. And introducing in the second colour just means that I can start to really sort of create a bit of a contour on the body. So let's go down the torso here and just find the tummy there. And then now I am going to bring in some more concentrated Mars Black, just for the sort of the last stage on this section. And just underneath the collar, That's nice. That looks nice to me. I can just keep sort of stretching it out and spreading it out. So now I'm going to sort of keep carrying on down one of the legs using that original Moonglow colour, and just seeing that the hair sort of, it's interesting, dogs' front legs I always find quite interesting because the hair sort of sweeps away down the sides. And it's just so important, even if you sort of start to get a bit bored, just you need to keep your brush strokes travelling in the direction of the way the hair grows. Building in those colours, and now I'm going to sort of really flatten it out, span it out into one of those gorgeous paws that's hiding underneath there. We'll come back to that for a bit more detail later on. So I'm just going to travel down the body again, down the legs, and it's always drying all the time, so I can go back in and just add one or two more little extra bits of brushstroke detail. But I think with a Schnauzer, especially one that's been clipped in the sort of Kennel Club way, Kennel Club is the UK sort of breed monitoring association, and they have certain ways that they sort of suggest, if you're planning on doing anything like smart, like showing your dog at a show, or if you just want your dog to be very proper, there are ways in which it's clipped. I'm afraid to say Crumble has never really bought into that, but I think Crumble is, well, because he's a Labradoodle, so I don't think he's even technically recognised as a breed. I don't know, because he's a mixture. Who knows? I'm sure one of you does. But a miniature Schnauzer has got these very handsomely done fluffy front legs. So now I've got both the front legs in, I'm going to take some pure Mars Black and just sort of come down one side of the leg, which helps give it this sense of roundness. And again with that one. I love painting animals. I do find it very fun indeed. Usually has to be a photo though, because they rarely sit still like this for long enough. I'm now going to just carry on this technique down the body. So starting with that Moonglow colour. And this is very much how you paint black fur, black feathers. You see how the light behaves, and you look for the other colours that are hiding in there. They are lurking in there. It might be not obvious. What I find often actually painting a black fur or feathers is sometimes easier to really be able to capture the contours of the body, because the light and the way it bounces off the black fur, it really doesn't lie. And that blue velvety colour is just fantastic. So the back legs, when they're sat down, it can be a bit tricky, but just keep on moving your brush round, keep going, and you'll get there. And of course, if you feel like you've got to a point where it just feels like it might be too blobby and heavy, let it dry and then go back to it with the next layer. And of course you have always got the pure black layer for the end as well. Nowhere is this whole sort of build up of layers more important than on the head, because we really need to get the contrast to get the character of the dog. So we start with our Moonglow mix, really nice and dilute, and bring that down. I did the ears in as well. And then I'm just building up that colour just a little bit more. A little bit stronger, just sort of above the eyes. But the angle of the brush strokes is very important at this point. It's always, you can always add more, but it's very difficult to take away. So that's my big bit of advice when doing this whole bit. And then from the muzzle, it all sort of comes out from the nose and curves down. And even if you don't quite get the nose shape right the first time when you're painting up around it, don't worry, because you will be painting the nose in some really sort of concentrated black in the last stages, so don't worry. Okay, we build up our layers, slightly darker layer, and then for the around the nose we really want to make that colour quite dark right in the centre there, and then fan it out. And then finally getting the real Mars black in there. Doing this all whilst it's sort of fairly wet, but it's obviously a slight danger of getting everything a bit too sort of heavy. And now I'm just sort of doing a little bit separate under the chin, just so it looks like we've got a top lip and a bottom lip a little bit. So I'm going to let this all dry, because we want to just have everything really nice and under control for when we add in the nose and the eye detail. But what I can do with a bit of Mars black is I can just come in and do under the ears. Yes, and we'll let this dry. whilst we're letting that dry, we can go down here and just put in the extra leg, the leg that everyone forgets about, the one at the back. And that can just be done with a little bit of darkness there. But the eyes, well, there probably is a bit of a brown shade in there. So what I tend to do, just to sort of begin the eyes, is I paint in a bit of a brown iris and just let that dry, and I can just start to sort of shapen up the side of the head a bit with a bit of the Mars Black around the side. And for the nose, it's all about the nostrils. So if we place in 2 nostrils like that, that's actually going to be the darkest part of the nose. We need to let those dry, and then we can, there we go, and then we can get that all blended in, and we're nearly there. So I gave him a little collar and a charm whilst I was waiting, a little tag, but I'm now going to just paint in the nose whilst those nostrils are just still drying. But the idea is that the nose has actually got quite a lot of shine on it, so you see the top of that nose. So I just painted that in with a bit of Moonglow, and then I can just sort of spread that out a little bit. But for the eyes, it is important to have the irises dry. And I'm still on my size 0 brush. I haven't gone right down to my teeny weeniest one. I might regret that in a sec, but let's see. So we're just getting the top half in there, looking nice, and I'm now just sort of painting in some black on the underside. But a lot with dogs, the eyes come alive with all the bits around them. So I've got some Mars Black hairs just going in sort of a look of general surprise on this dog's face. And then just using a bit of a wet brush. I'm pretty pleased with that. And then sort of on the underside, just getting a little bit of detail on the brush and sort of creating that sort of negative space underneath by just building up the hairs. And the eyes are subtle, like they're dark and they could be missed, but they are there. And now I'm just using some of the pure sort of Mars Black. Get a bit more expression in that muzzle. And there you have a very sweet little pet portrait. And if I just dilute down all this stuff I've got in here and just give him a little shadow there, then that is one happy little chap. Thanks so much for watching, and of course thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring us. And don't forget, the first 500 people to use my link will get access to one of Skillshare's best offers, 30 days free and 40% off your first year of Skillshare membership.